put it out there with zero ad spend and had over 183 million impressions with zero financial backing behind the campaign.
After the Trump attempted assassination, the founder of put out a post on all their social media platforms. He went from talking about how we need to be united again as a country, and then he tried to sell Trump t-shirts.
Crossing the line is a very dangerous line to cross, and I don't know of any stories of lines that have been crossed that were positive. Do you guys?
Dude, people were buying it to pour it out, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Just disappointed there's no Huff and Even More Puff this time.
What's that?
No Huff and Even More Puff. They shut it down.
They shut it down.
Before he's having a real conversation while he's wearing a Trump mask.
Well, this is the political episode, right?
It's not a good mask.
So this is from Temu, and 3 things about it. Number 1, it was like $8. It's hard to breathe in here, and I'm going to be honest with you. This doesn't really give me satisfaction that it's a healthy type of rubber. I think I'm gonna wake up tomorrow with like 7 toes.
You're gonna look like this after.
I can't breathe in it. It doesn't smell like rubber.
Can you see at least?
Not really, Jimmy.
That's why you should have stuck with socks.
Not
like
really.
me.
But hey, we do. Oh, I like those socks.
You like that with the real hair, so you can comb it over.
I like that. I got the Band-Aid on the ear.
The weird part is that sock hair is better than the mask hair.
What's that?
The sock hair is better than the mask hair. It's way better.
You think so?
You
think so?
That's creepy.
All right. Well, let's shoot politics, guys. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Do this.
All right, you take your mask off there. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the ASOM Pod, where we talk a lot. E-com is the path that we walk a lot. From 4 point of views when we're talking shop.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to the ASOM Pod, a show about perspective from the eyes of an agency, SaaS, operator, and a marketer, and focused on the D2C, e-commerce, and the retail space. With over 55 years of combined experience, founding over 12 different companies, we're excited to bring you this episode. All right, going around our room, let's start it off. Let's start off over here with John Roman, the Android-loving survival preparedness king. I added that for you.
Thank you.
4 times founder, currently leading as the CEO and co-founder at an outdoor venture brand called BattlBox, and has a hit Netflix original series show called Southern Survival. Then we got Amer, the formerly known as the Prince of Bosnia, co-founder and CEO of Praella, Webby winner, 4-time founder, and the branding and experiencing king, building websites for famous people like Billie Eilish, LeBron James, Rihanna, Paris Hilton.
And the preparedness king.
And the preparedness king BattlBox too.
I forget
then we
that.
got Bryan MacDonald, self-proclaimed funniest dude on LinkedIn, 2-time founder, the meat guy, anything but salad, our sponsor, rapper, marketing extraordinaire, and in his everyday life, he's the director of e-commerce at Almost Pride, the original raw food pet company. And my name is Jimmy Kim. I'm a 3-time founder of Sendlane, former D2C brand owner, email marketer, and digital marketer of 15 years. All right, let's go ahead and start off with a little shout out and thank you to a couple things. So first things first, if you like what you hear and you want to come hang out with us, we are now part of something called Creators Combine, which is where you'll find an awesome community, and it's available for agency, SaaS, operators, and marketers now. And we have all these fun cohorts going. I mean, last week I had my first call with the Creators Combine with the SaaS guys.
Nice.
There's just a couple of us now, but we were just kind of talking and picked up some cool things there, and was able to provide some great advice for these people too. And it's a nice open sharing place. So if you want to check it out, check out the show descriptions, come sign up. It doesn't cost very much, but it's very, very useful, especially if you're looking for people who are of the same mind and so forth. I also want to give a shout out to our 2 sponsors. We got Recharge. Recharge has built a robust product suite focused on retention and growth. With a decade of experience and ample resources, their capabilities empower merchants of all sizes to thrive. The world's best brands powered by routine, and world's best routines are powered by Recharge, the #1 subscription management app for Shopify merchants. Then we've got Gorgeous. Gorgeous empowers e-commerce merchants to grow through an AI-powered customer experience. They bring all their conversations into one place and leverage your data to help your team automate tier 1 support and free up time for your team to drive revenue and loyalty from your customers. The #1 help desk for Shopify merchants. Check them out. Make sure you mention awesome and tell them that you heard a rap for a great deal.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, today, as you kind of started and saw, we're talking politics, and we're about to get a little spicy about this. And I'm not talking about Trump versus Harris or what we think about their VPs, but we want to talk about the political landscape that is driving the effects and decisions on business. So I'm going to start with some interesting stats, and I've got a bunch of stats here written down, and I want to kind of talk about them here. What I thought were really, really interesting. So the first one's from Forrester, which I thought was really interesting here. 79% of consumers are more likely to purchase from brands that align with their political and social values. I thought that was a really good, interesting stat, guys.
Bigger number than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
79%.
I think it might be a little bit misleading and a little framing there to put political and social in the same category. I think they're trying to get that number maybe a little high.
Okay. I mean, it's
Yeah,
Forrester.
and the idea is, I think, how do prices impact that? And if it's truly that much, like if a product is $5 cheaper or more expensive, does that social or political stance influence enough where price doesn't matter?
Well, let's jump into the next stat then, which makes it interesting, right? They say 70% of consumers have boycotted a brand due to a political stance or perceived lack of social issues. I know we're going to talk about the sticker mule story later. But that's a perfect example of a modern day thing that just recently occurred.
Yeah.
That is affecting a business that probably, I mean, at least in my personal opinion, probably shouldn't have gotten involved.
Agreed.
So the interesting thing about that, so 70% of consumers have boycotted a brand, right? Amer, I don't know, you were chatting about this last night of the actual revenue impact that boycotts provide.
Yeah, so there's a professor that studies boycotts. His name is Braden King, and he did a study from 1990s through 2005. So the big important part here is really pre-social media reach. And he found out through all of the boycotts that happened, there was only 1% impact to their sales from all the boycotts that he studied during that period.
I'm sure it's gone up now with social media, but still, that's not a very big impact.
And the thing is, like when I was actually trying to prep for this, I was trying to figure out what is the duration of these boycotts. Because I've had like in the past, even myself when I was younger and even to this day, where I'll find something about a brand and they'll kind of piss me off for a month or two. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean,
I don't think you're unique there. I think everybody in general, you see so many boycotts and then people don't care.
yeah.
But I also feel like that those are skewed because we're in a different time now than we were 10, 20 years ago when those studies were happening. Good example being Bud Light. There's going to be more Bud Lights, and Bud Light still hasn't recovered and will never recover, right? And I think that is just the landscape that we live in now with social. Boycotts have a higher impact now because we're fed misinformation as well. We're behind these armies on social media. So there's going to be more Bud Light stories, and those numbers will change as time goes on.
But I think with the Bud Lights of the world, the interesting part is happening. And I was part of JCPenney when JCPenney took a massive miscalculation. And it's about bridging generations and bringing the new generation to a brand. And I think we're at a point right now with, boomers losing economic equity in the market, and that everyone is looking and saying, okay, how do we get the millennials? How do we get the Gen Zs and build the companies on that plateau and that foundation? Now, some companies are going with very progressive issues. Some companies are going very conservative, but I think these are long-term bets into where the
Are they long-term bets or is it short-term pandering?
I think both. I think there's certain brands that are probably trying to take advantage of the discourse in the country and the world. And I think there's certain brands that are saying, you know what, this is what our brand identity is going to be. It's not politically related or maybe social related, but REI with their outdoor campaign, that's their identity. Patagonia with what they're doing, that's their identity. Now, when you get into politics, it's a little bit different, but I think there are certain brands that want to be a lot more progressive. And then there's certain brands that want to be a lot more conservative. Chick-fil-A, or, we'll talk about later, like some of the things Ford has done. And both of them, these are the foundations of their brands, what they want the foundations of their brands to be.
Well, if you look at IBM's study on the Institute of Business Values, they said that 65% of consumer reports, their online shopping decisions, are influenced by politics, basically. They're making the decisions. But even more, which I thought was even more because you just mentioned about price and money, is that according to Centrist Strategy, 57% of consumers are willing to pay more for products and brands that stand on a social or political issue. I thought that was really interesting that they, again, this kind of goes to like Gen Z and the younger generation, right? And you know how they'll because they're like giving a tree away or planting a tree, not giving a tree away, planting a tree, or like giving someone a pair of socks or something like that. People stick to that idea of social giving or social values there. And it's very much aligning with what politics are really falling into.
Yeah.
So, and then the last thing I thought was even more interesting was that, 52% of consumers have switched to an alternative e-commerce platform over concerns of data and privacy and regulation on handling their personal information. I thought that was interesting. Like, if you guys think about a decade ago, no one talked about data and policy.
Nobody cared.
Regulation.
Yeah, no one cared.
But now that's become such a hot topic. And I would say it's a political topic because they've brought it up to the table. Now, I agree that, obviously data and privacy is very important, but it's only been brought to the forefront because of media these days.
Yeah. And California law firms suing everybody.
Yeah. So
That's a thing.
I'm going to set the stage here for this pod, and we're going to talk about some stories here. And I know you guys have prepared your own stories to talk about here, but I'm going to kind of set the stage about 3 stories. We talk about some interesting, iconic brands that have fallen and let politics sway their decisions and how to run their business and their effects. So I'm going to start with 3 interesting stories, and then we'll jump into some other ones from you guys. But let's start off with Nike, because Nike's been in the topic in the market a lot. Now, on the D2C side, right, they pulled away from all their retail recently, and they really got hit hard, and their stock value totally shows that, and shareholders are not happy about it. But let's go all the way back to 2018. You guys remember NFL player Colin Kaepernick?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And remember his Just Do It campaign, where, you know, he decided that he wanted to felt that racial injustice was upon him, and he wanted to kneel during the national anthem. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Do you guys believe that his brand was hurt as much as Nike, or do you think they were equally affected through that motion?
So I think that's a great call, right? In the short term, it was, both, right?
It was lashback and praise.
And what you saw is Nike quickly overcame it.
Yeah.
Kaepernick still, he hasn't played, hasn't played since.
Yeah. Yep.
Ever since then. And then, you're right. The stock price did drop.
Right.
But it did come back
It
up.
recovered.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. All right. Here's another one. Starbucks. This is an interesting one because Starbucks has taken a lot of different political stances, such as supporting same-sex marriage and committing to hire refugees, for example. And I think that's really interesting because those boycotts have led from, like, conservative groups have, like, started to boycott him and led to more loyalty. Over here, Mayor was talking about going to Dunkin' Donuts instead of going to Starbucks. You know, like, these are things that are happening. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think there's options now, but I think these are like global issues. And for Starbucks, I think, at least where I live, and I'm going to speak for Chicago, there are a lot of immigrants working those shops, and I don't know if those immigrants are refugees or not, but I think it kind of aligns for Starbucks to support that foundation of their company and then kind of add another layer to it, because there was a lot of happening. And here's the other thing that you mentioned earlier, with all of these discourses that happen, it's driven by media. So when Starbucks was doing this, like, there was a huge refugee crisis from Middle East.
And that's why they did it. That's why they did it.
And they were like, okay, we want to do something to bridge this gap of these potentially forgotten people that were dying in Mediterranean Sea or wherever they were coming from.
The media pushes it.
The media pushes it, and then, the company, they're ran by people, and some people are going to get triggered and influenced by what they see in the newspapers, on the screens, and whatnot.
The media pushed it so much. There was another company, Black Rifle Coffee, that chose to jump on the opportunity and push, okay, well, we're going to hire 10,000 veterans. And they got all of a sudden all this media attention on the other side of the spectrum because they saw what the media does with it.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you go back several years, Starbucks actually had a program where they were hiring a bunch of veterans as well. But all of a sudden that was overshadowed because of the refugee piece and then Black Rifle's response.
Well, as the stock tanks right now, as we're shooting this pod, they just replaced the CEO over there,
which is wild.
Chipotle's new CEO. Yeah. I'm curious to see. We know the portion size joke, but the cups may get smaller. But however, I don't think he's been known to be on a political side of things. So I'm curious how that company can potentially change.
Yeah, I've never heard anything.
A lot of this stuff. I think they're going to focus on business.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? How can I help? I have the platform to handle any problem you dealt. Thank you for that. Yeah, but where is my belt? It was order 113 if I remembered it well. Hold on 1 second. Let me see what I can do. It looks like end of day today is when your package is due. Thank you so much. Wow, you did that so fast. Wait, aren't you the only one you guys have on staff? Yeah, I am, but this helps in enormous ways. We appreciate your business. Have a gorgeous day.
All right, here's one more. Here's a popular fast food restaurant, Chick-fil-A. Yeah. We always talked about that. CEO Dan Cathy had made, sentiments about the same-sex marriage, and the company donated organizations opposing LGBTQ plus rights. I had to read that really well.
Yeah, good job.
This stances have led to boycotts and refusals and permits. They've had challenges with obviously people who do not agree with him. Do you think it's actually affected them with that stance? Or do you think?
Well, I don't think it does. I don't think it has. I think it has irritated people that oppose it. But the reality is, I haven't found anybody that actually won't go there.
And you also have to look
the food's so delicious.
And also where Chick-fil-A is geographically located.
Yeah.
Right. Most of their revenue is in very heavily populated conservative areas.
Yeah.
So, it's not like they're all over in California and New York and 60% of their revenue is coming from blue states. Like I'd venture to say 90% of their revenue is coming from Republican areas.
I lived in California for many years, dude. There was always a line around the block
Yeah.
with Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
They were the ones with the
delicious.
double drive-through.
So good.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like they're one of the few companies that actually can have a double drive-through to use, you know?
Talk about an efficient drive-through experience,
Very,
too. That's a whole
Very.
nother
Especially when they're
conversation.
holding their little things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no doubt they run a business really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. They're so nice there too.
My pleasure.
So let's go around the room. And I know you guys have all, I asked you guys all to prepare different stories here today about different politics. And I want to, you know, talk about it. And I'd love to hear the stories, share it to listeners, to those who have not caught up to some of those stories. I'm going to start with you, Bryan, because I think you've got one of the more interesting ones that have first come up recently,
Yeah,
which is a
Sticker
company
Mule.
called Sticker Mule.
Yeah, Sticker Mule. So we've been ordering, we still order from Sticker Mule. Sticker Mule, for those of you that aren't familiar with, is a direct-to-consumer online sticker company, right?
Custom stickers.
Custom stickers, vinyl stickers. They do decals. They do everything from, and by the way, their hot sauce is actually, have you ever had their hot sauce?
No, they have hot sauce?
Yeah. So if
Flow
you have,
solid.
I think it's orders over $99, you get a Sticker Mule hot sauce jar.
They
or
make their own hot
container.
sauce.
Yeah,
Huh.
it's delicious. So anyways, after the Trump attempted assassination, the founder of Sticker Mule put out a post on social media, all their social media platforms. And then he also went a step further in utilizing their email list and sending out pretty much the same message on social via email. And that email wasn't, I think we were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah,
It
the
wasn't
context of it
wildly-
was not wild. It was very well thought out
Yes.
and well spoken and not overly pushing
Yes.
a narrative.
But the thing is he went from talking about how we need to be united again as a country, how we need to come together as a country. But then he also supported Trump in that same message. And then he tried to sell Trump t-shirts as well. And it was a huge back and forth comment section debate, right? Where a lot of their, liberal followers and customers were going back
triggered.
and forth, and they were very triggered by it. And so much so that you watch the first 24 to 48 hours when this story came out, their follower count dropped 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, right?
It's free fall.
Free fall. And then that's when we were all talking about it in Creators Combine,
Yeah.
which is
And
another cool conversation.
And all of a sudden we saw the people that weren't offended were offended by the people that were offended.
Yes.
And then they rose up and
Yes.
were all of a sudden overly supportive.
Yes.
This is the place I'm ordering my stickers from. It had a weird pendulum swing.
Yes. And now if you look back at it, they have more followers now than when they started the drop off a few weeks ago.
It's a risky move though.
It was a very risky move, right? But I think what we don't know, right? Like Bud Light now, we can talk more about Bud Light in terms of what they've seen a year or two down the road. We don't know how it's going to affect Sticker Mule to a degree, but it's also it's an online sticker company, right? I don't know if they have as much of a household name brand power in regards to, a Bud Light or a Nike of the world. So
Yeah, I'm not
at
sure if
the-
I even knew of them.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of weird to see how it plays out. But I think the moral of the story, right, is even though the message wasn't crazy, the founder of Sticker Mule did shove a little bit of the Trump support, right? And even though,
hit everybody on every channel.
correct, every channel, right? So now as a consumer, if I all of a sudden, my customers are used to getting pet food sales, they're getting blogs, articles about animal care and well-being.
That's what you signed up for.
And that's why I joined your email list. And now all of a sudden I'm talking about Kamala Harris. You open up that email, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I just want dog food.
Yeah, that's it. I just want a sticker,
So one thing that was interesting, I mean, this could be conspiracy, maybe not. But so I remember when you made the post on LinkedIn and we were laughing at someone who had looked at your profile and it was their Sticker Savage's head of PR.
Yes.
And initially I was like, man, poor guy. Like he probably had the easiest job in the world and then woke up on a Monday and was like, this is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But you were saying he's new to the role.
He's new to the role. He joined like a week or two prior to all this happening. So what I'm
Welcome to your new
wondering,
job.
is if
all part of the plan.
or all part of the plan, right?
It was
Where
they
it's
were
like,
playing chess and they knew what they were going to
But
do.
they say all press is good press, negative or positive. We all heard what Sticker Mule is now at this point.
So they say that, but in today's day and age, yes, you could argue that, but at the same time, we now have people getting canceled.
It's harder to control the conversation now.
Yeah.
Because he's getting hit from all sides. Just a quick question before we move forward. I'm curious with what you guys think. So Sticker Mule had this rebound in followers, but I'm curious what the impact financially is going to be because I know a lot of times this happens and somebody will jump on a company and show them support in any way that they want if they align with their beliefs.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean necessarily they're going to be their customers.
Well, I think that leads perfectly into your story, actually. So I agree with Bryan. I think there's a lot that we learned there on what they've done. And again, maybe it was a calculated risk. We'll find out in a couple years. I think it was just very interesting that they were so much to jump on it as a not really a business to business, really a consumer company, I guess, a little bit of business to business, but they affected a lot of people there, and we'll see what happens. But that leads us to another brand that did do this in 2020.
Yeah, Mr. Pillow.
Mr. Pillow. Do you guys remember
Mr. Pillow?
Anyone have a Mr. Pillow?
But I saw a commercial yesterday.
Did you? Mm-hmm. I have a Mr. Pillow. It's a terrible pillow.
It's not good?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's like a little I like a good pillow, and this is not a good pillow. It's really, really fluffy. And
what pillow preferences are... It's a full spectrum.
The pillows here aren't great.
They are not very good.
No,
not at
they're
all.
horrible, actually.
Yeah.
Let's go into the story, though. But, the thing is, 2020 is when it happened. You're still seeing ads on TV.
Yeah.
Obviously, right? It was a lot to do with the Georgia elections or the election stuff.
Yeah, so there's, it's interesting. So pillow and bedding, side note, what a huge market, right? Huge. Town. And it obviously appeals to people on both sides. But, Lindell, the founder CEO, is a Trump supporter. He made it very well known. And, there was some pushback initially on that. Some people were triggered. But what really the tipping point for him is when there was the back and forth about, was the election fair and everything with the 2020 election. He then went full spectrum on it. He went hard and very loud and putting dollars behind standing up investigative, firms to look into it, and was on news constantly talking about it. And he really went so far into it that all of a sudden he started feeling negative effects of it. So when you think about some of the negative effects, one of the main things is he started losing social media accounts. So, that was the time, even Trump lost his Twitter account at the time.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of killing accounts.
It was canceled.
People were being canceled, and social media platforms were deciding, not necessarily even against policy, but they were taking political stances.
This is when big tech got involved, right?
Yes.
This was the whole drama in 2020.
So, you lose your social media channel where you have millions of followers, you lose that reach, and they might not be following you on another reach. All of a sudden, you're feeling that, right? Your organic reach has gone down exponentially. So that's the first hit that he took. Another big one is that there were retailer responses. So rest in peace, Bed Bath & Beyond. But Bed Bath & Beyond, Kohl's, Wayfair, they all pulled his line. So now you're dealing with sales channels that arguably, even conservatively, that's millions of dollars. And then, the last piece, now, we've already seen reach and revenue impacting. Then we get hit with a lawsuit. So we got hit with a defamation from Dominion, the voting.
He talked so much about
He
him.
talked so much about him. They got him. He settled, and I don't know if it was a settlement or
He had a payout, I think, right?
$5 million.
Yeah.
So, you look at all of that, and it's not a public company. We don't know the financials. They're still running ads on right-leaning media regularly and on radio. So they're still around. They arguably could be doing great revenue-wise, but you can't discredit the fact that they lost sales channels. They lost reach. They had to give up $5 million. It would be very, very, very tough to argue that whatever increased sales by leaning like he did could offset all of that.
The interesting part for me in all of this, I think from all of the ones that we're talking about, he's the person that actually rebranded himself into this. He used to be like, when he would come up on TV, always the pillow guy.
Yeah.
And then,
which is, just to clarify, that's after he was the crackhead guy.
yes, yeah.
Because he had a crack addiction.
I did not know that, but
I researched it. I found it. It was actually a cocaine addiction that then turned into a crack addiction.
Okay.
Which then went to pillows.
Logical transition.
What a good transition.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people will transition to pillows from crack.
Maybe
but
he was tired of
it's,
sleeping
give him credit. Like, addictions are not easy to overcome.
That's not a laughing matter. Good for him for getting a hold of his life.
It actually could have been a very feel-good story.
And it was a feel-good story, right? People love a good story. People love a comeback.
Yeah.
And he did that, and then he, and maybe I have bias here. I really dislike when call it the far right and the far left, like people that are loud and want to push the narrative. It bothers me.
Yeah, and to me now when I see him, I almost forget that he had anything to do with pillows.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember the entire discourse around elections, and I think we're all as a country in a place where, like, when we want to talk about politics, we want to go to the town square. When we don't, we don't want it to be
Yeah, because in America, we settle these differences at the BattlBox.
Yes, at the BattlBox.
Little plug there. A little plug. Well, look, I'll start with the pillows still suck no matter what you say, but they still sell a lot.
But obviously they're selling lots, so some people like
Somebody
them.
likes the pillows.
Some
or
people
they like the political stance like we talked about. And what's really interesting about Mr. Pillows now, they seem to be still maintaining business. They're still running ads. They're still doing things, which means that they might have found their market.
Yeah.
Their market might be, and this could be the future, we are a conservative home and bedding right-wing company, and if you're liberal, you probably shouldn't come look at us. I know that sounds crazy.
Yeah, but we don't know their financials. They might have 3x their LTV.
Yeah, we don't know.
It's true.
To offset.
Support,
Yeah.
Because they were running support things too. Remember when he was going through some litigations, he like put it out there and told his base that he has
And they gave him money.
Yeah. And
just gave him money with
donated.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Donated the guy. It's so wild how the world of donating has become such a big deal. Like when I was growing up, and I'm going to start aging myself, and I think we're all around the same age. Like we never donated to causes, things like that. Like GoFundMe and all these things are all very new, recent social actions that are happening.
Yeah.
You see a woman on TikTok who's like, something happened or whatever it might be, and then they go and start a GoFundMe, and people put millions of dollars into that. And I think
it's crazy how much money
wild.
people raise.
Think about it. And we have no idea what happened afterwards.
We don't get the update.
No, we don't. A lot of times you don't, or they become a social media famous person suddenly and they start making money, which is even more mind-blowing. Right?
And you even get hit now in the stores, CVS, grocery stores, during checkout. Donate, Lewis has, give Lewis a leg. Whatever the case may be, there's something there.
All right. So we went to the right. Now we're going to flip to the left side so we can be fair and we can be politically agnostic here. But Amer, you've got the Ford story. And I think really interesting about Ford is like, Ford, I would say, just if you think about Ford trucks, Ford Mustangs, and a lot of what Ford stands for, you would say that it's more conservative style market is probably what they've...
Or just America, blue collar,
that's
like
what I'm
hard
saying,
workers.
and that generally leans that way in most cases. So it's like a blue collar thing. But Amer, you've got a story about Ford. We'd love to hear this.
And the funny part is when we're talking about Ford standing for America and everything, this story actually came and stemmed from their European market.
That's where it started.
That's where it started. So what had happened is Ford released in Europe, their European headquarters, released a Ford Raptor that was in that traditional Ford blue. And somebody went on social platform and said, very gay, should be camo or black and gold or something. So that reached their head of marketing for the European market. And he was like, what does it mean to be very gay? Like, he found that like really funny, but in a way that is like, it's disappointing that this is the discourse people are willing to be part of and, shame people's lifestyles and whatever. And what he came out and said, and I read his story and I want to get his name. His name was Julian Watt. And he kind of told the entire story. He was like, you know what? We have employees of all walks of life at Ford and they contribute to our company. So they came with the very gay Raptor as saying, you know what? We don't care who you are, whether you're gay or not, or what kind of walk of life, but you are not going to have a discourse in our name shaming people of a life they have maybe been chosen, especially if they're part of Ford.
So he stood up for his people.
Yeah, for his people. And then it had broader impact. And then they were also afraid that, or there was conversations, and he was very transparent about it. How is this going to be perceived by people they may not like this message? And also how is this going to maybe be perceived by the LGBTQ community? So they talked to a lot of people before they did this, and they said, look, we're going to do this to send a message, but we're not going to monetize it. And what happened is they put it out there, put zero ad spend, and had over 183 million impressions with zero financial backing behind that campaign. It worked really great for them. And their message was, we as a company are going to stand by all kind of lifestyles that, they believe in as well as a company. And they want to be an inclusionary company of everyone.
So I didn't do research on this. So I don't know what the messaging was. I think it's messaging it to be very careful on and make sure it's sensitive to everyone. But I will say, I didn't know that it started in Europe. And I would say also by the time it made its way to America and the media got hold of it, it might have just he might have had great messaging, and when the media got a hold of it,
there was a lot of lashback here on that.
It was, but we have to understand when we spoke about media earlier, depending what channel we're looking on, whether you're watching progressive or conservative news channels, they're going to spin the story in any way they want. But if we don't go to the source and listen to the story, when I read this at first, like I always think when Bryan's getting into politics, like this is like, almost a suicide mission because it's really hard to come out on the other way. But when I actually read his interview about this, I was like, I understand where the guy's coming from. And if your employees for any reason were to get picked on,
if you're a good leader, you're gonna stick
it's
up
like,
for your
dude, like
employees.
this is a good person. And he did not want Ford to be a reflection of the company that is going to go in a corner and not stand up for what they think in their brand book is the right thing to do.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, if I took this much consideration for every comment I get on a post or ad of ours, I mean we get horrible. So I'd say we ban 8 to 10 people every day from our organic posts they're aggressive, obnoxious, very rude, very mean.
You ever get people you banned that show back up with another account and continue to hammer you?
No, so on some channels, yes. Meta has a great new feature where when you ban someone, you can ban someone and ban
their other accounts,
and
right?
other future associated accounts.
Yeah.
I
So
love
you're
that.
just
Yeah.
you're saying sayonara.
The only thing I would say here, and we have to again go to the human element of this, whether I don't know if it was Julian Watt that made the decision or who met forward and how all of that worked out because they acted very quickly. Sometimes we have to understand a decision may stem, and I'm not saying this is for him, I'm making an assumption. If somebody sees something, let's say in this case, a person that might identify themselves as gay be impacted negatively in their life and they're exposed to that person being bullied, harassed, or whatever the case is, this might be an easier decision for them. Where that comment, 99% of the time you pass it by, that one time is like, you know what? I know my brother, my cousin.
Yeah, there might have been there. Yeah,
Then
there
it's
might have been
elevated.
something. Sure.
Yeah, it gets much more elevated.
Yeah.
So
well, you're emotionally. I want to say emotionally hijacked
because these
but
are not
you're
just
skin in the game.
brand decisions; these are also human decisions behind those people that are running the brand, and they influence the direction of each
It's a
brand.
funny name, the very gay raptor.
Yeah. Dude, the Ford though, like one of the things that I do respect about it is they stood behind it. They didn't walk it back after.
Yeah.
No, they didn't.
No, and you see a lot of that. You see a lot of the whoops.
So it's like, if they don't walk it back, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming that the consumers did love the messaging because there's plenty of people who did like and enjoyed the messaging behind him, probably created more brand loyalty. Did you ever find any research that tells you that it did help?
Yeah, I mean, they said like from a awareness standpoint, because of those 183 million impressions, it was.
Yeah. It's tough to know. It's
but
tough,
they didn't like put out a very gay Raptor for sale. They ended up producing one in Cologne, Germany, because people wanted to see one, and they were like, "Okay,
Yeah,
we'll
but they didn't
produce
sell
one."
them.
Yeah, it wasn't like a monetization thing for them. It was more like brand principle. This is who Ford is as a company, and it was the one they made very quickly. And to your guys' point, they stood by it.
It wasn't the review we watched yesterday, though, right? That was a pretend.
Yeah, that was a pretend. Yeah, that was a parody.
Was someone mocking them or something?
Yeah, that was a video marking them.
It had some interesting features.
But this is how like
car.
crazy social media is, and especially American social media, because like, so I have buddies obviously in other countries, and what we see is so different than other countries, where when that news got back to us, I remember my buddies saying, "You see Ford's making gay Raptors now?" It's like that was the messaging in the
Yeah.
US. It's like they weren't making them.
To be fair, I didn't give a lot of time to it or think about it, but I just assumed that that's what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That they were
As
just.
someone who's in cars, I definitely saw the car community like rise up towards it. And they're
Yeah.
just like, the Mustang owners, for example, who are pretty proud of their cars and stuff. They were like, what is this thing? And, and then the truck owners, especially because, again, typical truck owners,
Sure.
be a blue collar, generally leaning towards a right or conservative side of things. And they definitely didn't like it, right? Their base didn't like it while they were attracting potentially new people into their market. And I know that was the whole point was to expand markets and try to find more
It wasn't though.
people.
It wasn't that.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. The concept was like, look, you're making a claim that something looks gay. Like, what does it mean to look gay? Then this was just like, hey, we're not going to stop behind this language, and we're not just going to create a very gay Raptor and say it's still acceptable to be very gay and be a Ford enthusiast. So it wasn't anything about market share for that.
Okay, so we've talked about not walking it back and owning it and explaining what you're trying to do. Then there's when you walk it back, which can blow up in your face.
Yeah, well, let's talk about walking it back, because my example I thought was really interesting. And, this one's pretty recent. It was April of 2023 that this occurred. So now we've saw Mr. Pillow happen. We saw the Ford Gay Raptor happen. We saw, Sticker Mules recently. But you hear all of this, and then this company called Bud Light, we all know Bud Light, the famous beer can, right? They went out and they hired this marketing person. And I know the person got a lot of the backlash. Obviously, there was a leadership buy-in on this, but the marketing person came in and they basically collaborated with this transgender Dylan Mulvaney. I may screw that up,
Mulvaney.
but they brought they in. I don't know how to be politically correct on that. So they brought they in. That sounds really weird. And they had a personalized campaign that celebrated the 365 days of girlhood milestone documenting.
So then her.
Yeah, her gender transition. So it is a her.
Yeah.
But dude, the backlash of that story was incredible because, again, we go back to like the trucks, right? Like, again, I'm generalizing. I'm not saying everyone who drinks Bud Light does this. I'm just purely saying generally the market
Right,
leaned to a certain
their
thing.
demographic might not have been super responsive towards that.
And what was so interesting is social took that upon themselves, regardless of both sides almost. They took it upon themselves and they started canceling them. And remember, there was on the shelves.
Dude, people were buying it to pour it out, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. This is like when they go to war car. Like I always joke about the story of like you see like war footage that is happening, and they'll like take and make like a flag of like the American flag, and they'll like make it all nice and pretty, and they'll work on it, and then they'll burn it right away. And you're like, why did you guys work so hard to do this? You could have bought it on tech. Why did you go out and put all that work on it?
So, you know, it's funny. This blew up. It quickly blew up on both sides, right? A support and against. But it was just a influencer creator collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Like we do dozens of these every month. And
I think it was like
and
one
they do
post,
too.
right?
Yeah, well, so this whole campaign, they had a bunch of collaborations, a bunch of influencers / creators, and they made like special cans for them. And, you know, they spent some time and effort. And it was this one that, because it was polarizing, blew up. And then
the hashtag boycott Bud Light started to appear.
Right.
And when that all happened, Anheuser-Busch, who's like the overall arching company, parent company behind it, dude, they walked it back.
Yeah.
And to talk about that, they walked it back. They made a statement. They fired the marketing people. They blamed the marketing people, right? Poor girl. I don't know what her stance. I've nothing known about her. I didn't do enough research on her, but she's now labeled the girl that got the woman
not
that got
fair to her.
Bud Light canceled, right? Like that's a pretty big thing considering, and even at the stock value, 23% drop in stock value when that occurred.
Yeah.
As an overarching, not just because of Bud Light.
Right.
Remember,
Yeah,
Anheuser-Busch
parent
owns
company.
like what? God, like
They own a
we saw
lot.
that
dozen,
chart.
beers,
Yeah.
whatever.
More than a dozen. I
Yeah.
think it's like something like 25 or 30 different things. They buy a lot of CPG brands and stuff like that. So, you know, we saw that happen and they pointed the blame away from people and we saw that noticeable decline. What were you about to say?
it's wild because they decided to walk it back, but there's different ways to walk it back and there's different ways to handle it. And I think they just kept making mistakes and they kept making the issues worse. And, you know, it probably came insincere to their demographic. And then you have people that weren't even involved in buying Bud Light to begin with, that you've then taken on an emotional roller coaster of, oh, they're supportive to no, they're not. So you've now energized people that weren't necessarily even consumers, but they're going to be loud on social to create even more issues. Yeah, they did not do a good
I'm not
job.
a beer drinker, but
I'm not either.
people went to, I think, Modelo, I think is what everyone ended
Modelo?
up going
Yeah,
towards, right?
Modelo.
Yeah, that was where everyone started.
It's a better beer, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, Bud Light's not really known for quality.
Yeah, it's not. Bud Light's not known for its flavor.
Yeah, maybe people were just like, you know what, this is a good reason for me
Yeah,
to stop
I've
drinking
been
this
looking for a
shit.
new
Yeah.
beer.
Well, the other thing that, and Jimmy, I don't know if you came across this, very interesting for Bud Light when they went through this. So she ended up getting attacked as well tremendously on it. And when they did this transition, when they let a bunch of people go, Bud Light gave her zero support. So they kind of left her
Yeah, they turned
Yeah.
it back.
to her own. Yeah,
And they probably brought her in to begin with and like
that's the
reached
thing,
out
yeah.
to her and said, hey, we want to do this
Oh yeah,
campaign.
they did. They brought her
Like,
in because of her like marketing background.
And
her
then she's
beliefs.
it's so not fair to her. She's a casualty.
Yeah, it's like they went into business and then when it blew back. The interesting to me here is when people or companies of this size make these decisions, again, I hope I'm not wrong, but I feel like they're calculated decisions.
No, so you're giving them too much credit.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think like there was a boardroom meeting about this.
No.
The boardroom didn't even know that this campaign was even happening. Right?
Not boardroom. I'm not talking about boardroom.
I would say even senior leadership might not. The marketing department is running and they're, hey, we're gonna do this campaign.
We need to go get more sales.
Yeah.
How do I get more sales?
Yeah.
I'm going to go into more verticals.
Yeah,
I'm
let's
gonna go
find 20
more
creators.
people.
Let's get a few different verticals and let's
Let's
go.
Now-
lean into influencer creator. Exactly. Like it was the trend that was happening.
Was Bud Light struggling at this time?
No,
They were not.
They were
No.
just trying to expand and grow. That was the thing. It wasn't about the fact that they were trying to create a new playbook or try to find a
No.
new market. They were just purely saying, hey, we know we've won this demographic on this side.
Yeah, how do we
but
get
there's
bigger?
this other side of people who drink IPAs and fancy beer. And I think, again, this goes all the way back to having a product. But the end of the day is like they were trying to find a way to make more sales.
Yeah.
And they were trying to expand. And you're right, John. I doubt a lot of these things that have occurred started at the top. It started down bottom.
Yeah.
The reaction of the leadership is definitely telling how the team will support you
Yeah.
too.
But as we stand today, I believe Bud Light did bounce back, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, not all the way
Well,
though.
Bud Light did it. Anheuser-Busch. did it.
Yeah, Anheuser-Busch.
But it's
Yeah,
such
yeah,
a
yeah.
diversified
Yeah.
company.
But I think this is a good takeaway though for folks, not in regards to political and social issues, but just in regards to when you go off sometimes as an operator or brand or a SaaS company or an agency, and you go to chase new verticals without realizing what effect it may have or the actual core group of your customers that you're leaving behind in a way, right? Whether you're talking political, social.
Who's your customer?
You know, who's your customer? Like they wanted to open up new verticals, you know, without realizing their value of their current base.
And it's interesting, like take Sticker Mule, take your example with Mr. Pillow. These were very, very rigid political stances where you talk, you know, Bud Light and the very gay Raptor with Ford. I wouldn't say they were very political. They were almost more like social, but it's not like they were remember, like with Ford and with Mr. Pillow and with Sticker Mule, they were not going after a new market. They were just standing up what they
standing
thought.
up for what they believed in.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a personal belief, they were taking the line of personal over.
Correct. Yeah. And it's interesting. And again, I'm curious what you guys think, but like, one, what would your advice be to a company? And two, like, what should they be prepared for? Like, I'm not against people catering or, sharing what they believe in or maybe instilling into their business with the asterisk to know there is going to be a certain market response to that.
Yeah,
belief.
I think it's just using critical thinking, possess critical thinking. And yes, there's nothing wrong with having personal beliefs, right? That's one of the most amazing things that there is. But understanding your business and your customers, understand your customers, don't make assumptions, understand who your customers are. And we've talked about best practices before of regularly talking to your customers and getting feedback. And just truly, you're doing yourself such a favor anyway to understand your customer because then you can service them better, but understanding them. And yeah, there's a lot of brands that have been successful at leaning in on left and right ideology, right? Because they understand their base and they know that it's not going to cause pushback. I think just understanding your customers.
And yeah, it's also important to understand your brand identity from the get-go. So if your brand company was raised on these ideologies or these beliefs, then it's not an issue leaning into it.
Sure.
Like Black Rifle Coffee, for example. If they sent the same message to their customers that the Sticker Mule CEO did, it wouldn't be talked about at all.
No.
Why?
It'd be expected.
It'd be expected because that's what the company was raised upon.
We should have included them. They had major drama.
They had major drama.
They had
too.
major drama.
That's also very true.
Because of what you said, they built their foundation on that ideology, and then it came out that they had been making donations to the left. And reality, they weren't. But when you make a donation to a political party, you have to write the company you work for, and you're not representing the company, but that's in the public data.
Yes.
So they got hammered because of that, because they had technically made political donations to both sides.
Yes.
Because they're a large organization.
And I think one of the things that I've taken away from some of this lesson is unless you are like Black Rifle and you started the brand on a position or you're selling Trump socks, for example, or something like that, and like there's a reason for you to be on that side. I always say companies need to be like Switzerland a lot. And what I mean by that is you got to be agnostic because everyone has their own beliefs. But is it really our right as a brand and a company, and especially if you're just selling consumer product, to make a decision for or to tell people about our opinions? Not really. And I think a lot of times when you look at some of the ones that are, leadership led challenges that they've had, like this is the very key point that people say as a brand owner or a brand founder or anything. Like what you say online really relates back into business, regardless if you mean it or not. I don't care if you say it's my personal belief or whatever it is. Like at the end of the day, they're going to translate it to you because your identity is in your company or what you do in your everyday life.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's a really good point. I would say, if you're running a brand, take a moment and put yourself in the shoes of a consumer because you are a consumer for other products. And I would say most consumers, especially over the last few years in the US, you've felt whether you were impacted on the left or impacted on the right when brands have taken stands and how it makes you feel, right? And it's not good. So if you felt that, and I guarantee you every consumer has felt that, why would you then put your customers, who are the reason you're in business, through that feeling? It just makes zero sense.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary.
Agreed.
And some could say the loyalty could get stronger on some people, and then you're also going to lose other people.
Just why deal with the drama?
You're dealing with flipping something that doesn't really help you.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like every story I've heard, like they might have picked up some people, but they lost enough people, and it becomes a net zero gain.
And you piss people off.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Or it could be a marketing play.
Or,
Way for
yeah,
us
they
to-
hired the PR guy. Maybe they had a plan.
And they could have had a plan.
Yeah.
That is kind of crazy, but
Just seems-
look, let's
just
be honest.
seems like a lot of
sometimes
work.
That's what people think about in order to do something to kind of spark the business presence, right?
Maybe I'm lazy. That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work,
Yeah.
dude.
And you can make assumptions like, we'll go to you BattlBox on your side, like without knowing anything about that side of like the assumption there. Like we can assume the customer base you have, but you will never go out and state it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important
But
thing.
we have both sides.
Well, you have both sides. Of
Yeah.
course, that's because you're not stating you're staying Switzerland. You're focused on what you're doing and delivering a good and great
Because that's what
product.
matters.
That's what matters most.
Yeah.
That's why they're there, not because they want to care
Nobody
about your
wants
political.
that.
No.
Leave politics
Out
to
of this.
politician.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. And Amer is going to be a politician one day. So he's taking this in. So he's not going to go and lean one way or the
From
other.
monarchy
He's
to
gonna be moderate, he
democracy.
says.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the prince to the
I
president.
like that. Paper straws.
Yeah. Paper straw.
That is dedicated to all the brands out there who are struggling with subscriptions. To the people out there with churn rates higher than their mortgage. Y'all called the police on us and we were just trying to get you on recharge. And now look where you are. You know what I'm saying? It's all good, baby, baby. It was all a dream. Welcome to the recharge scene, where tension just double, celebrate with your team. So watch your churn go down. Every single day we said that recharge will turn you around. There's 20,000 brands that they serve. If your first name is Jay, they'll make your last name Curve. Trusted, robust, and dynamic. They'll make you money while you're laying in the hammock. Just kidding. I wish that was how life worked.
Guys, I mean, look, separating company to politics is just as important as separating your personal business. I think that's what we're learning. And crossing the line is a very dangerous line to cross. And I don't know of any stories of lines that have been crossed that were positive. Do you guys? No,
I think
none that are overwhelmingly clear.
There isn't.
Yeah,
Nobody's done it and actually been successful. But why do people keep trying?
But the thing is, if we look at most of these campaigns, boycotts, whatever you want to call them, they haven't really impacted majority of the companies. I think Bud Light is a
Probably the most extreme.
rarity,
Yeah.
but it hasn't impacted them. I think we're in a society to forget really quickly. We move on. And it also depends, is a company in a financial position to potentially withstand that pitfall, whether it's My Pillows or whether it's a Target, Anheuser-Busch, or whoever. The other one for me, and I was kind of thinking as we're talking about this, you can also accomplish as a company, you have to be careful about it, but with careful positioning. So like I was thinking about the refugee thing with Starbucks and the media attention got from multiple sides. I know on both sides of the political spectrum that every single person, I think, or majority of the people, left or right, want the best for the refugees. That's never the argument.
Yeah, right.
The argument as a being is how do we help them and what is the path to help them? Right. So I think a lot of companies could take a more of a universal stance, like, hey, help, the Red Cross, help this company, whomever, to potentially donate. I think if you go to a right-leaning group or a left-leaning group and we say, hey, in the interest of humanity, of your religion, of your politics, let's, raise $10,000 for whatever. I think majority of people from both sides of the spectrum donate to those. But I think when you shove beliefs and concept down people's throats,
That's right.
That's what ends up triggering people the
Nailed
most.
it.
And people, look, I think this all comes down to the one thing. Everyone wants to grow, but they forget that the loyal base of your customers are what actually matters the most. Are the people word of mouth. It's loyalty behind those people. And you really, to Amer's point, like you could have done this in a lot of ways without offending anybody and really playing on the social cause of helping or doing or being better, right? And look, there's a perspective to every story. I think what's really important is as we see it on our side, I guarantee you there's people who see it on a different side or they heard the side or the businesses themselves. Like you said, maybe the PR person was brought on literally to do this. And this was the entire objective is let's go viral on the internet. I don't care what I do. I just need to go viral to get my name out there. That could have been in it too. And
maybe advertising was too expensive.
Yeah. And we know people are goldfish. And I talk about this all the time. And they forget just as quickly. And I know we're bringing up some of these things, but I guarantee you until I brought it up, most of you guys didn't even remember a lot of these things until I brought it up to you guys,
you're
right?
You're right.
Yeah. It's kind of wild when you think about that. And, I think there's a story at every side and it's all about making your best judgment. So with that, guys, this is episode 14. That was politics and commerce. I think that we've learned a lot here and I think that we can continue to learn and we'll continue to follow these stories as we see if it affected people or what actually happened. And well, just like you vote, we'll find out and see what happens here in November too.
That's it.
All right. Well, guys, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, and let us know what you think about it. And follow us on social media, X, TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're everywhere. Just type in awesome to find us. And don't forget to leave us a review and rating, right? On your favorite podcasting streaming network, if it's Apple, Spotify, or whatever Android users use, whatever that might be.
Sounds like I use Spotify.
We have to bring that back, you know what I mean? So remember, we're a video first podcast. We, of course, are filming on location today. We're here at the Foxwood Casinos in what part of Connecticut are we in?
So this is, let's ask the crew here. What's this called? Norwich? Mashita?
Mashita.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too hard for me to say. But.
And as we're talking, I'll do a little B-roll here so you can see our setup.
But we're in Mashita. We fly and shoot, and we put these great videos together for that reason. So watch us on video on YouTube. That's where you'll find us, where you'll get that high-quad experience, plus some B-roll. Plus, if you watch any of the sponsor apps, for example, that Bryan does for him, there's actual video behind it, which is really fun, not just the tunes.
And, we are selective, and the sponsors, Recharge Gorgeous, make this possible.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with them, actually we use both of them.
We use both of those. Yep.
Yeah. So special thanks to our sponsors,
special
Gorgeous.
thanks.
and Recharge for helping us make this happen and let us get together to make this shot. Obviously, we're all getting together. We're having fun, but we're also doing this because we enjoy going out and doing that. So with that, the next episode, guys, we're getting back to tactical stuff again because I know we've gotten a little bit away, and we'll come back around to this stuff and take some more hot takes. But we're going to dive into something that I thought would be really fun because we talked about war stories. We talked about all these things. We haven't talked about just success. I want to talk about success and talk about our most successful launches that we've done in the eyes of different ways that you've done. I'm going to be talking about something I did as a brand. I know you guys have different stories that you've prepared that we're going to talk about, but the next episode is about successful launches and how do you succeed in having a great launch of a product or service. So that's the next episode. With that, special thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
Welcome to the ASOM Pod, where we talked a lot. Ecom was the path that we walked a lot. But now the question is, will you subscribe or not? Ha!